Hello, and welcome to something of a different video than I normally do. Normally I just talk about games, but in this video I am going to talk about a television show called Alien Earth, which I've been watching. And it was, how can I put it? I was enjoying the show somewhat, but I did have reservations about the intelligence of some of the characters in the show. And the last episode, episode 5, In Space, and it's a reference to In Space, No One Can Hear You Scream, which was the promo tagline from the original Alien movie. And this details the fate of the Maginot, which is the ship you see at the beginning of the first episode. This ship crashes into Earth. It's basically the premise of it's basically the premise of the show. The ship has crashed on Earth, and there is a scramble to collect the specimens that are on board the show.
So, Esther said I should explain the pathogen for you. The genetically
When
mutagen policy.
you watch the first episode, it's clear that things have gone wrong on the ship before it crashes on Earth. That's why it crashes on Earth. So we've had to wait 5 episodes to find out what happened.
Faster, stronger, more durable,
So
but crazy aggressive.
essentially,
The company wanted
spoiler alert, there is a saboteur on board the ship, and this saboteur has
That's when everything
made the ship go on a collision course, disabled the nav system, controls. The ship is basically a missile at this point. I think they describe at one point the ship is a missile, and then they say it's now no longer a missile, it's an arrow. Now, I don't know whether I've got that the right way around, but they make reference to the fact that essentially it's on a trajectory that cannot be altered. Okay, fine. It transpires that this has all been set into place by a character in the show who is like the youngest trillionaire. Was a child prodigy. He's a guy in his 20s, his early 20s, I think. His name's Cavalier. I've heard people refer to him as Boy Cavalier.
that was the lab's consensus theory.
And anyway, yeah, he's
Definitely artificial.
he's behind the sabotage. And the show shows you that he's been in contact with somebody on board the ship who, again, spoiler alert, it's an engineer. I guess he's the chief engineer on the ship. And the belief was that he was in cryosleep, but he managed to program his cryopod to show that he's in there, but he's not, kind of thing. So he's able to be going around the ship, conducting various acts of sabotage, some of which includes opening these sort of containers that have the alien eggs in them with the face huggers that come out. They attach to 2 of the crew members, one of which is the captain. He's killed when one of the surgeons tries to remove the facehugger using a cutting implement. The acid leaks out, sort of kills him. And the other one, the facehugger's still attached. They obviously didn't therefore try and remove that, so they put him in cryo. They put him in like the hypersleep capsule. Which is reference to the idea that Parker has in the original Alien. When Kane has the facehugger on him, Parker says, "How come you don't freeze him?" They don't really pay any attention to him, and as you find out, it wouldn't have worked anyway, because apparently being in cryo doesn't impact the alien life cycle. They're running around the ship because, yeah, this is where things start to get a bit insane and a bit stupid. So let's just say a little bit more detail about this ship, the Maginot. It's been on a 65-year mission to collect alien organisms from around the galaxy. Fine, that's all great. And we're told in the first episode that in the act of collecting these very dangerous organisms, because apparently the only organisms that they've collected or that there's an interest for are hostile. But they've lost a lot of people. They've lost people, they say. And they tell you that in the first episode, that there's a number of people have died in order to obtain these life forms. So they know they're dealing with very dangerous organisms, and the assumption would be that these organisms are quite resourceful. You know, I'm sure that during the act of collecting these things, they probably come across Xenos and probably
a special someone,
and probably, you know, witnessed how they were killing people. So yeah, there's no real doubt at all in sort of anybody's mind. There's no doubt that these things are dangerous and they need to be kept. They need to be kept under lock and key. That's great. You know, so keep them in quarantine. They seem to have these quarantine pods that they keep them in that are like a 3-stage thing. You have this very basic seal that's kind of easy to open, and then there's a thing that sits on top of that then prevents the pod from opening. Even if they open the seal, there's this thing goes on the top, and then they're kept in like a retainer thing on the wall. So, I mean, that gives you a bit of a sort of background and a bit of a backdrop into why, or into how, rather, the ship is functioning. So we get to the show, and then we see that Morrow is bored. Morrow is the security guy. He's the cyborg guy.
Okay.
And yeah, he's brought out of cryo because they've got a crisis going on, and either the crisis is, of course, potential sabotage at the time, and the fact that the captain's dead and another one of the crew has this facehugger thing on board. So he starts to conduct an investigation as to what's going on, and then you have it cuts to then, I assume this woman is a xenobiologist because she's studying these things in the lab. Although it has to be said, in watching what she does, you wouldn't think that she was any way a scientist. She is absolutely useless. She just does the most stupidest things I've ever seen in an alien movie. First of all, it's supposed to be like what you would call a quarantined environment, and she's sat there in this quarantine environment eating and drinking. Now, I might be making a lot of assumptions here, but I would assume that if you were dealing with alien life form, if you were dealing with alien life forms, you would have a very sterile environment, and also you would be wearing protective gear. Right? You wouldn't be in there completely unprotected. You would be wearing at least the basic level protective clothing. I mean, if you go back to Alien, when Kane is brought on board and they have him in the med bay, Ash and Dallas are wearing it just looks like a plastic surgery thing, but also they're wearing a respirator. Now, they're just blue-collar workers. You know, the whole emphasis is they're blue-collar workers in space. They're truckers, space truckers, basically. But they're taking these precautions. And in Alien Earth, these scientists on board a ship specifically going out there to obtain these hostile organisms take absolutely zero precautions whatsoever. None at all. I was just like gobsmacked. I'm like, are you for real? Are we supposed to believe that these are intelligent people? These are supposed to be like top scientists? Now, you know, say whatever you want. You know, people say, well, you know, that this is part of the theme, you know, people are stupid. Why do that? This is what I wanted to talk about. There wasn't a need to present the crew of the Nostromo being stupid. You know, and actually that would have probably been more forgivable, because at the end of the day, their field of expertise is not dealing with xenomorphs. Their field of expertise is transporting a refinery through space back to Earth. That's what they're there to do. That's what they're trained to do. That's their job. So, you know, again, I'm somewhat I'm somewhat curious as to why these scientists aboard a vessel specifically brought there to bring back life forms to Earth are not taking sort of basic precautions. It don't make any sense. Why do this? Why can't you have it so that these people act in a way that you would expect anybody, even in the modern day, if you're going into a potentially hazardous environment with any kind of pathogen or potential pathogen, people wear protective gear. You know, we have in our own lifetime a global pandemic where people were taking precautions from, you know, a virus. People were already doing that. So, you know, if people, just average people, are doing that, are we supposed to believe that scientists that have been assigned a specific mission aren't taking any precautions at all? And it's brought into sharp contrast when one of these things escapes, one of these creatures escapes and sort of infects this jug of water that this woman has, this scientist woman has. It injects it with its offspring in there, which, by the way, are considerably big. I mean, it's not a microorganism that it puts into this jug. It's just like tadpole-sized creatures. So if you were drinking it, you'd clearly feel the organic matter that was in there. You know, it's not like it's a microbiological thing where, you know, you wouldn't see it unless it was under a microscope. I mean, you can clearly see it. So yeah, that wouldn't really work. You'd know if you'd ingested it. And yeah, anyway, this crew member, who is an absolute idiot, he's supposed to be an engineer's assistant. He ends up drinking this water thing a bit later on, and of course he gets infected. They go back into the lab, so he's clearly ill and infected with something. Okay, because he's coughing up blood and all this stuff. They then go back to they take him to the lab where this woman and the doctor start working on him, and they're not wearing any protective gear even then, even when they're dealing with somebody who is clearly infected with a pathogen. They are not wearing any protective gear at all. They're not wearing any face masks. No, nothing, and it transpires this is ultimately what ends up killing them, because as they're trying to extract these tick-like things out of this guy's body after he's drunk the water, it releases a gas, and the show is not clear whether what they use to vent the room, because they vent the room with some kind of gas, whether that's the thing that kills them, or whether it's the gas that was released by these tick things is what kills them. It's not really clear, but either way, had they been wearing basic protective gear, they probably would have survived. So yeah, the xenobiologist and the doctor both end up dead, not through any direct action of an alien, but just by being stupid. So it's comforting to know that Weyland-Yutani, in sending these people into space to collect these specimens, something, by the way, which is so important to Weyland-Yutani that 65 years later they're still hot to trot about getting these specimens back. It's comforting to know that that they send out absolute morons in order to achieve this critical mission, as if they wouldn't get the best they could possibly get, like the most intelligent, the most intelligent, the most proficient, what's the word I'm looking for? Most diligent, the kind of people that don't make mistakes. That kind of people, super professional, best in class. These people are going to nail it. That's what you're expecting that they would send. And why would they cheap out? If this was so important, why would they cheap out and only use cheap people who are moronic? Why would they do that? That if you want to use that as an excuse, well, the cost cutting. Why? That doesn't make sense, because we've established that this is absolutely critical for Weyland-Yutani. Because 65 million years later, they are absolutely all over making sure that they get these specimens back.
Give the lady time to work, fire team.
So why are they doing this? It like I say, the show just doesn't make sense. It literally doesn't make sense. We're supposed to accept that these people would be that stupid. Meanwhile, the alien that was inside the guy has hatched out of the cryotube, blown out of it, obviously killed the person, blown out of the cryotube, and is currently at large on the ship. Now, granted, they probably would not know what this thing is or its capabilities. I mean, in the original Alien, when they go to find the xenomorph after it's blown out of Kane, they don't know that it's grown to an 8-foot killing machine. They don't know that. They still think that it's going to be about the size of a cat. And so, yeah, in the show, I'm not expecting them to appreciate the fact that this thing is big. You know, it's an enormous 8-foot tooth and claw death machine. Don't get me wrong. However, they would at least be, I would think, being priority in locating this thing and dealing with it. But everybody seems to be really casual. You know, the people have been making wisecracks, and they don't behave like real people. Like they have this like totally casual attitude to everything. It's like you're in the midst of a crisis. You are in space, and you are in a serious crisis. Why are you acting so stupidly? Why are you coming out with stupid quips and cracks and stuff like that? Why? Why are you not acting in a professional manner? It is unbelievable just how stupid the people are in this show. And that's the thing. It's like you're supposed to feel bad for these people. You know, the idea with this kind of thing is you feel bad because people are dying, and that's supposed to be bad. That's supposed to be the horror. But you don't. Well, I certainly didn't. Simply because of the fact that they're stupid. They're doing stupid things. They're not behaving in a way that a normal people would behave, so you can't really identify with them. And I always think this is done by writers as a way of like, look how good these aliens are. They want to boost how good the alien is and how good these other alien life forms are and what have you. That seems to be the thing. But the way that they do it is by making everybody dumb. You know, rather than actually doing it in a way that makes, you know, just elevate the intelligence of the alien life forms themselves. They do it by dumbing people down, and this is a thing that I've seen happening a lot these days. If they want somebody to be good, they have to make somebody rubbish. They don't seem to be possessed of the ability to make somebody good without making somebody else bad, like incompetent. If you go to Star Wars, for example, the latest Star Wars stuff, in the sequel trilogy you have the First Order. They dumb down the First Order. They make them stupid and incompetent. Yeah, this is something that's supposed to be an existential threat to the New Republic. But the First Order is they're just dumb. But they built something, you know, they turned a planet into a Death Star. You know, they're supposed to have quite easily taken over the galaxy. And they did it in two ways. First of all, they made the Republic, when they wanted the First Order to take over the galaxy, they made the Republic, the New Republic, unbelievably stupid and nonsensical. That was their way of doing it. That was their way of making that happen. You know, like the Republic don't respond to the threat of the First Order at all. You know, they mysteriously don't want to engage in actively hunting down the remnants of the Empire. You know, something that absolutely they would do. You know, that you would not take any risks. You know how dangerous the Empire was. You are not going to take any chances at all. You're going to ensure that any remnant is dealt with. But no, they didn't want to do that, so they come out with, you know, this idea, which, by the way, you have to go and read the novels to understand this, because they never, ever explained it in the films, because I was waiting for that explanation as to why the New Republic was not dealing with the threat of the Imperial Remnant that becomes the First Order. So, yeah, they dumb down the Republic. The Republic gets destroyed, and then, pretty much destroyed in The Force Awakens. And then to counterbalance that, because then the First Order become the de facto rulers, they want to deal with the First Order, so they dumb them down. It's like, why are you not making these things, these organisations good? Build up your heroes by giving them a challenge for them to overcome. Instead, what they do is they make everybody dumb. And this is it, like, they want to showcase how lethal these alien life forms are, not just the Xenos, as they call. I mean, they call that's the other thing that kind of annoys me a bit. They call the alien xenomorphs, which was a line used in Aliens by Lieutenant Gorman. And it's like, he's supposed to illustrate, like, he's kind of trying to be, look, I'm super smart, and I'm going to use, like, instead of just saying an alien life form, he says a xenomorph. And that was it. It's not the official name of the alien, but it's kind of been adapted that way. But they use it in this show, like, they refer to the alien, which is kind of weird, because a xenomorph is just like a blanket term, just like how the word alien is a blanket term. It doesn't necessarily refer to a species. It's just what you use generally to describe an alien of any description. Anyway, that's kind of a bit beside the point. It's just like a little bugbear of mine. It's how word has been misused. Word has been taken out of the context it was originally used in. It's kind of what I'm saying. And now means, it's become to mean something completely different, and for what it was originally intended to be. So anyway, yeah, this thing's at large on the ship now. People aren't. Well, the overall impression I got watching the show was nobody seems to be overly concerned by it. And so, yeah, eventually, obviously, this thing turns to full size. Now, there was a crew member called Tang, who's been acting like he's a real weirdo kind of person. He just keeps staring at this woman in cryo. For some reason, they don't do anything about it. Apparently, he's an android, I guess. That's why they can't just put him in cryo, essentially. But that's not true, because if you watch Alien and Aliens, Bishop in Aliens is in cryo. I mean, in the novelization, it implies he wasn't, and he was flying the ship. But if you watch the film, he is. And Ash was in cryo in Alien. I guess they're doing this throwback to David. David wasn't in cryo in Prometheus, and in Alien Covenant, Walter isn't in cryo. The implication they're running the ship while the crew is in cryo. But in Alien, Ash is in cryo, and in Aliens, Bishop is in cryo. So I guess there's sort of two ways of looking at that, but I think if the implication that this android is clearly malfunctioning and being weird, well, they can't really do anything about it because they can't put him in cryo. My point is, yes, you can, because they have been put in cryo in previous Alien movies, so you can't use that as an excuse as to why they tolerate having something or somebody going around who's clearly weird and not doing anything about it. But then to me, I'm just like, no, dude, if you weren't in cryo, you'd be in some kind of, you can deactivate an android. I'm pretty certain that's possible. But you wouldn't have something that is absolutely, like, not functioning right. That's for certain. Not having that. Again, this is supposed to be a highly important vessel collecting alien specimens,
You're at our outer defense
and
perimeter.
you are just completely acting like a bunch of bloody idiots. And I find it insane. So yeah, then of course the alien grows, and then it takes out an android. Now I'm not entirely sure. This is why it kind of confused me as to whether this Tang guy was an android, because the alien takes him out. Well, aliens don't really go after androids as such. I mean, yeah, the Queen does kill Bishop, but like, for the most part, aliens don't do that. You know, they tend to be pretty ambiguous when it comes to an android, unless an android is in the way. You know, and they want to take it out. Because it's either trying to stop them doing what they want to do. But this thing just like, he's like in an interrogation room because he's being asked, you know, as part of, you know, as part of the interrogation procedure into finding out who the saboteur is. I mean, yeah, understandably, he's like public suspect, public enemy number one, the main suspect, as it were.
I want to lock down this whole damn tower.
It just, yeah, it then goes in this room and kills him, apparently. And you're just like, okay, thought it was an android, why would it bother doing that? But yeah, he's like the first victim of the alien. And then of course he then proceeds to start killing people. There is a little cool thing where the Oculus alien, the one that like burrows into somebody's eye and replaces it and then controls them.
Crossing to Lacassi Tower.
There's a little cool thing where that thing controlling one of the other engineers, the one who is not an idiot, the one who doesn't drink the infected water, it takes over him and he has a bit of a fight with the alien, and then the alien sort of destroys him as a host, and it detaches from him and then tries to find an eye to burrow into on the alien. But of course, like, there isn't an eye because the alien doesn't have any, so it's kind of bouncing off its skull, which is kind of funny a bit. But yeah, like, the whole sort of thing, just the whole episode, people just doing stupid things. People are being stupid, and it infuriates me. Like I say, this has become a trend in TV shows and movies into making characters completely dumb. And why? Why is this the case? In this show, there is literally no characters at all that I'm rooting for. And that's not a good place to be in a TV show where, you know, you have characters you want to sympathise with. You want characters who you can root for. Well, this show really doesn't give you any. You know, I'm not really concerned or worried about androids as such because, you know, let's be honest, they can be repaired and they're androids. You've got the hybrids, which are like androids that have I don't know what you could say, like this, the psyche essence, basically the brain of children in there, because that's useful. I mean, you know, why you would think that was a great thing. And this leads me on to the next element of what the characters doing stupid things in the show. So you have these hybrid creatures, let's say hybrid androids. So essentially, like I say, they are android bodies with the mind of children in there. Now, initially, in the first couple of episodes, they send these into the crash ship to extract the alien life that's on board, which was a bit questionable at the time, because you just think, well, why would you send these very expensive, unproven hybrids in there to do this task, to do this retrieval? Because let's be honest, they might have the body of an android that's quick and super strong, etc., etc. They might have that, but they've got a mind of a child, so they're going to behave like children. And the show shows you that they do really dumb and stupid things, while they're going on this retrieval. When you find out that the Cavalier guy has orchestrated this whole sabotage on board the Magina, so he knows about this and he knows what's going to happen, why on earth is he not prepared proper? Why didn't he prepare proper synthetics to do the job? Why hasn't he? Why hasn't he got half a dozen of them to go in and do the job? Because the one synthetic that he has is extremely competent and does the job without any kind of drama. And he's been left in charge of these hybrid people, these hybrid kid droids, whatever you want to call them. And they're essentially an accident waiting to happen. But why would he do that? Why? That doesn't make the slightest sense at all. Not the slightest bit of sense at all. But yeah, again, he's supposed to be the smartest, the smartest kid around, the most intelligent person on the bloody planet, we're led to believe. Yeah, he would do something remarkably dumb like that. Yeah, nice work. And again, we're supposed to just accept that's the right thing, that's the right thing to do, is to send these in, when he could have just very easily got half a dozen really good, competent synthetics to send in. Makes no sense at all. The other thing that, in thinking about this afterwards, that makes no sense, and at the time when watching it, I didn't really cotton onto this. He's been in contact with this engineer aboard the Maginot to facilitate this sabotage. Well, that ship has been on a 65-year mission. This mission started before he was even born. And it's not his company that has instigated this, it's Weyland-Yutani. So he would have very limited knowledge, I'm pretty certain, considering he wasn't even alive when this ship begun its mission. Yet somehow, he has knowledge enough to be able to contact somebody aboard the ship. And again, a good question to ask would be, how in the hell does he know that the person he does make contact with is going to be somebody who is willing to cooperate? Because he's going to have to have done it the first time. The first person he contacts on board that ship in order to make this sabotage occur, he's pretty much going to have to make sure that person's compliant, because if that person is loyal to Weyland-Yutani, which, let's face it, the likelihood is that would be the case, because who in their right mind, knowing that they were carrying all of these hostile organisms, who in their right mind would want to sabotage the ship and run the very high risk of being dead? Because sabotaging a ship in space to have it crash into a planet is a pretty surefire way of ending up dead. Your chances of survival are not good. So the person that you contact with has got to be willing to take this colossal risk. How are you going to do that? You know, how the conceit here of having not only that, but actually having it so you contact the right person, that they're going to be willing to do what you want them to do, and not just like contact the security on board imagine Morrow, the security guy, not contact him and go, hey, I've just had a communique from this guy on Earth, because they wouldn't even know who he was, because he wasn't even alive when they set out on their mission. Asking me if am I willing to sabotage the ship. The conceit here is we're supposed to accept that he was that lucky that the first person he contacted was willing to do that. Even if he had a plant aboard the ship, you then have, I say he couldn't have, because he wasn't even alive when the bloody ship set out on its mission. So he couldn't have put a plant on board because he wasn't even alive then. So it's literally down to this incredible chance. This absolutely unbelievably incredible chance that the person he contacts is going to be a willing, a happy, willing participant in something which is essentially a suicide mission. I mean, you can offer him all the riches in the world, but his chances of survival are quite remote. And then there's the risk of being discovered, because as it transpires, when they find out who it was, because the Morrow, the security guy, who by the way is the only decent character for me in the show, he's a cyborg character. He's just been talking to this guy on he's relatively unsecured. I mean, he hasn't deleted the transmission, or if he has, he's not done a very good job of it. And Morrow, the cyborg security guy, is able to see the whole conversation that he's been having. So, that again, you also have this saboteur who's an engineer that is also speaking in a communication system that has been recorded. It's not exactly, Einsteinian levels of intrigue here and deception. Just again, there's no real intelligence applied to the characters here. And let's then also consider, even if we can say the ship is going to be guided in to crash into this location, because it has to, obviously the ship has to crash in a location that is controlled by Prodigy, the Prodigy company, which is Cavalier's company. If that is not if that isn't put there, if that doesn't crash there, then the whole thing's for naught anyway. But so there's a hell of a lot of contrivances here, and a hell of a lot of things have to occur in order for this mission to be a success. And it doesn't really seem to be very good odds. But somehow, of course, it comes off because that's what the show needs to have happen. And I think a lot more, it would have been far better had they just done this in a way that things went wrong on the ship and it was entire opportunist. which is kind of what was implied in the beginning, that it just happens to crash in his territory, that it's not done by design. That was far better. That was a far better thing, implying that this whole thing has been done in this elaborate sabotage. It's just, I don't know, it just seems absolutely rubbish to me. It's improbable and requires so many things to have had happen that are improbable things. And it's just, like I say, this happens quite a lot in a lot of TV shows and movies these days. It's like they need something to happen, so they formulate like a contrivance in the plot to make that happen. And it detracts away from the story because it becomes eye-rolling. It's like, oh yeah, right, as if when you could have had a lot more explanations or a lot more plot devices that could have driven it forward in a much better way without relying on improbable things in order to have that happen. The other instances as well, when you're dealing with things like, you see this saboteur on board, I mean, he's not trained in sabotage. He's an engineer, fine, he would know how to fix and therefore would know how to break certain systems, but there has to be a certain, espionage type training or knowledge to be able to get away and do these things. You have to conceive of these ideas in the first place. You have to be able to conceive of the plan in the first place. Engineers are not trained to be saboteurs. He could very easily have been discovered. So, even with a degree of guidance, you have to be competent in the art of sabotage to be able to do that task. I think there's this idea, well, if you're an engineer, you can break things. Yes, you can, but you've got to put yourself into a position to be able to do that. You've got to be able to get to a place without being discovered in order to be able to carry out that sabotage in the first place, and that is not an easy thing to do. That sort of intrigue requires a degree of competency in a completely different set of skills. So again, there's so many things that you have to suspend in your belief, and when you're dealing with these type of shows, of course you do to some extent, but it's a lot to ask of the audience to continuously suspend their belief to such an extent that things just become ridiculous and improbable. And that is just exactly what it felt like watching this episode of the show. You've got the sheer stupidity of just about every crew member on board, apart from Morrow, this security guy. The way that people behave in a totally unprofessional manner, and in an improbable manner, bearing in mind the situation that they're in and the mission that they're on. You would have extremely professional and competent people, especially in space. It doesn't matter that it's in the future and space travel might be more routine. It's still a very challenging and dangerous environment. You look at the people you send into space, even people that have lost their lives, they're all very highly trained and very competent people. And even then, disaster can happen. And this is what I mean, if you wanted to have the ship, the aliens escaping on board the ship and killing people, and the ship consequently crashing to Earth, because the very easy thing could have been there, it's unmanned. Everybody's dead apart from the security guy who's having to hide in that little thing inside the mother control room where he does end up being. There's no one to fly the ship, because they're all dead, and it goes off course. You could have had many things occur, like a an event happen, a meteorite colliding with the ship that, damages the lab area of the ship and causes a failure, because the containment fields in there, because that's the other thing that I meant to mention about when they put the pod, after the little tick alien escapes, they put the pod with the Oculus creature, which they've also been observing. They put it back on the shelf, and they say that when these things are locked in and secure, a green light comes on. There's 2 of them in there, and they put the Oculus alien back in, but the green light doesn't come on, so it's not secure, and that's how it escapes. It sort of rocks the pod back and forward, and it falls on the floor and smashes, which also makes you wonder why these containment pods are quite fragile. Why wouldn't you be using a material that doesn't break on impact? We have that type of glass now. We have Gorilla Glass, for God's sake, that's really tough. This thing just falls on the floor and shatters, as if it was made out of just common everyday glass, like the glass you would have a drink in, or something like that. It doesn't appear to be very robust. Again, you're containing lethal alien life forms inside of something. You would expect that to be unbreakable glass. That would be just something I would expect it to be. Why, therefore, do they have it so it shatters? It falls on the floor and shatters, just like a standard glass tumbler would. But, completely ridiculous in my view, but hey. But yeah, you could have had, like, a meteorite colliding with the ship while everyone was in cryo. As it enters the solar system, and they come out of cryo, and the aliens have escaped, and they're trying to contain the aliens, and there's damage to, the nav on the ship, and the navigator and the pilot of the ship have been killed by an alien, So the crew there are frantically trying to fix it, and they've been attacked, and, they're overwhelmed. They're still competent, but the scenario is overwhelming them. That, to me, would be better. Instead, you just contrive people being stupid when they shouldn't be, when the mission that they're on implicitly suggests that they wouldn't be that stupid. And like I say, I've seen this in so many shows. I give the example of Star Wars, where people just become conveniently stupid. The Republic becomes stupid because they need the First Order to take over. Then they need the First Order to be stupid because they want the rebels, the resistance, whoever, to win out in the end. Everybody just becomes conveniently dumb to suit the narrative. And it strikes me as being very lazy writing. Rather than having to create a situation where you've got very, very competent people and you have to therefore use a higher level of competency to defeat them. No, it's just like, well, we'll make them be really dumb all of a sudden, which just doesn't make sense. And in order to have this ship crash on Earth, they had to create people being dumb, rather than just put people in an insurmountable situation. This whole thing would not have happened had somebody been intelligent enough to put the cryo to deal with the aliens in the lab, and the cryo storage that the alien, or the storage thing that the aliens are in. I'm assuming it's cryo, because how do they know what the lifespan of these creatures are? I mean, it might be very short. So first of all, that's the other thing. Why aren't they in suspended animation? These things might only have a lifespan of a few days. They'd be all dead. They'd be long dead by the time they get back to Earth. Why wouldn't that be? I mean, if the whole point is to bring back these live specimens, why are you not putting them in suspended animation for the voyage home? Because you literally don't know what their lifespan would be. The chances are they would be dead. I mean, less evolved life forms aren't always known for having a long lifespan. I say these things only live for a few days. They could only live for like a year, a couple of years, but apparently, no, they're not in any kind of suspended animation, which would also double up as a security thing as well. So yeah, like, there's too much belief that has to be suspended in order for this to work for me, and it just doesn't. And I'll finish up watching the show. I mean, I think there's only 3 episodes left now of the show, or maybe even 1, I don't know if it's a 6 or 8 episode series, so I'll finish up watching it, but it just kind of ruins it. You know, it spoils it for me. And I just wish this I think it's lazy writing. I just think it's like, let's contrive of a way of making something happen. You know, it's like, not only have you got the stupidity thing in Star Wars, but you've also got the Force now. He's able to do things he was never able to do, and it's just so they can get out of a situation or make a situation happen. It just seems cheap to me. You know, it just lessens the whole thing. But anyway, that's pretty much it. I've never done a video, I don't think, really talking about movies. I might have done one where I've talked about the original Star Wars while I've been playing a game a while back, but yeah, I just watched the show and I just felt it just did my head in. At the minute people started to do these really stupid things, I was like, why are they doing that? Nobody does that, you know? Like, again, is it like, oh, well, humans are dumb? No, they're not. The very fact that they would be able to travel, you know, throughout the galaxy and collect these life forms, implies there isn't a lack of intelligence. There is a high level of intelligence to be able to do that. You can't just then undercut that by making them do stupid things. And the whole sabotage thing is such... There's so many things that you have to accept in order for that sabotage subplot to have occurred. And even if you can call it a subplot, I guess it's the main plot, isn't it? Part of the main plot. But yeah, a guy who wasn't even born and would therefore have no knowledge of the ship unless he did, you know, was able to hack into somebody's computer system to be able to find out about it. And then, even if he had the manifest, he's got to reach out to that ship to make a communication with somebody on board the ship, and has to assume that that person, A, is going to be compliant, and B, you know, even if you had the personnel records there and you knew about this, assuming that that person actually isn't in cryo at the time where you send the signal out to the ship. You know, he might be super intelligent, but he's not omnipresent. You know, he's not a god. You can't just, like, hone in on a ship in deep space down to an individual in a pod, wake that person up and make him a deal. And it just, yeah, there's so many things that could go wrong. It would be easier for him to have hired mercenaries once it come back into the solar system, or on its way to the solar system, to hire a team of mercenaries to go and intercept the ship and take it and bring it back to a location on Earth. It would be easier and cheaper for him to do that in the long run. You know, he's a trillionaire, he has unlimited money, why wouldn't he do that? And that would be a guarantee of success. There's so many variables that have to go in his favour in order for this to happen. And on top of all of that, by the way, I'm pretty certain, even if you're trying to guide a ship in whose nav system and what have you has been completely disabled, the slightest deviation is going to make it miss its target by a considerable distance. You know, like even a space shuttle coming back into Earth's orbit from sort of low Earth orbit returning back to Earth, they have to follow a very specific flight plan. You know, it has to be absolutely spot on, otherwise it ends in disaster. And we've seen that in our lifetime, a catastrophic failure of a space shuttle returning into Earth's orbit because it had a slight damage to it. You know, the heat shield failed, and this ship actually, you do see it on its way back, collides with another vessel. I don't know if it's a space station or another ship. That would have knocked it off course. It doesn't take much to knock something off course. In space, they're constantly having to do course corrections, and it tells you in the show that they can't change the course. Anyway, that's about all I have to say on it, really. It was just annoyed me. Just infuriated me a bit. But yeah, that'll do. That's all I've got to say on the subject. So yeah, slightly different video from my Doom ones. But yeah, catch you later.